Hello and welcome to Cycles of Time, your weekly guide to what's happening on Earth as we make our revolutionary journey around the sun. For time immemorial, our human ancestors have created myths and meanings to help us adapt and thrive as seasons change. Join me each week to explore the intersections of these ancient cycles, from the indigenous medicine wheel to the pagan wheel of the year, the Babylonian and Greek zodiac to the I Ching, the ancient Chinese book of changes. I'm your host, Allison Dale, and this is the Cycles of Time podcast. Hey everybody, happy Monday. Welcome to your forecast for the week of April 15th to 21st, 2024. So how's everybody doing after that eclipse last week? After the sun was eclipsed by the moon in Aries in the human design gate of shock last Monday, the sun then transited into the gate of growth from last Wednesday evening until today. So it's been a big week, a lot of changes. The frequency we were just in after the eclipse, called the gate of growth, is also known as increase in the I Ching. And for the past several days, it's been encouraging us to look at life as a series of cycles, which is quite fitting for the Cycles of Time podcast. It's like a culmination of all the things that have happened over the past month since the spring equinox. And just kind of seeing how that all shows up in a cyclical way. The gate has invited us to remember that growth is always achieved by completing a cycle, and that it is essential to reflect on the cycle that you've just been through so that the past lessons are learned and old mistakes need not be repeated. I know for me, this past week has been filled with a lot of reflections on past cycles. I found out on the day of the eclipse that a dear family friend of mine passed away after a long fight with cancer. And she was a beautiful soul, a passionate artist, an environmental activist, and she was someone who inspired me so much in my early years. So, when I was a teenager, I spent time caring for her children. And this past weekend, I spent a lot of time reflecting on my childhood and their childhood and just really how lucky I was to have her as one of my elders in my community growing up. Over the eclipse portal, I also spent a lot of time reflecting on the last total solar eclipse that happened in 2017. And because I was just curious about looking into the effects of different eclipses in my life from before I got into astrology and into the cycles of time and tracking that. So I just decided to look back through some photos and back through my phone and emails from that time between August 2017 and 6 months later, because eclipses can have effect over the following 6 months. And I really just traveled back to that time period in my mind, and it was a super revealing exercise for eclipse season. That eclipse happened in my first house of selfhood, and leading up to it, I was feeling quite unhappy with myself. I was stressed out and overworked and not really feeling seen in my life. And so right after that eclipse in 2017, I rented an art studio and got into an artistic practice again and really got back in touch with a lot of my passions and back in touch with just my selfhood. And then 6 months later on the next eclipse, because eclipses always happen 6 months apart, I got pregnant with my daughter. And so it was really interesting to see that. I didn't really remember that eclipse being the catalyst, but reflecting back, I'm super grateful for that 2017 eclipse, that total eclipse. And I could see from looking back at photos that it definitely shook up my life for the better, even though I didn't really know it at the time. So I feel like this eclipse affected a lot of people I've been talking to in a lot of big ways. And sometimes it's hard to know exactly how that will play out in your life until 6 months later or, until later on down the road when you're reflecting on it. So if you do feel like you were affected by that total solar eclipse that happened last Monday in any way in your life, just continue to give yourself time to process everything that's happened and know that oftentimes it's opening up a door for changes that you could never quite expect. Oh, I think one reason that I'm so into astrology and human design and the I Ching and looking at all of these cycles of time is because by speaking these languages, I feel like I have a bit of a superpower to time travel back into different areas of life and look at moments that I've already been through so that I can integrate their lessons and not need to repeat the past. Sometimes it just takes time passing to get a perspective on what a lesson was. And sometimes it's helpful with these systems to be reminded which part of your past to revisit and when. So if you experienced any reflections on your past cycles over the course of this past week, let me know in the comments. I always really love hearing from you and have appreciated all of the comments and feedback that you've left on Spotify, the Spotify surveys and polls, as well as on Substack. So please keep it up and let's keep the conversation going. The energies are shifting post-eclipse, but not necessarily slowing down for the rest of April. There's no need to be afraid, but just, buckle your seatbelts because there's a lot more, big stuff happening in the skies. Tomorrow, the sun is moving on to the gate of ordering, so we'll focus on that, along with some major planetary activity in the sign of Taurus in this episode. Thanks for listening, subscribing, commenting, and sharing the cycles of time. I deeply appreciate every bit of your engagement on this new project. So please click that subscribe button or send this episode to a friend who might be interested. So we'll start with your weekly overview here. On Tuesday, the sun is entering the human design gate of ordering, which is known as sprouting or difficulty at the beginning in the I Ching. Then on Friday, April 19th, the sun is going to enter Taurus. And on Saturday, April 20th, we're going to experience an electrifying Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in the sign of Taurus as well. We are still in the medicine wheel direction east, in the element in the Wuxing 5-element cycle of wood. In the zodiac, we're moving from Aries into Taurus season on April 19th. The moon phase is waxing from that new moon eclipse to the full moon. And tomorrow on the 16th, the sun is transiting from gate 42 in human design, the gate of growth, to gate 3, which is the gate of ordering. So just a little reminder that when I talk about, we're in a gate or we're transiting through a gate, by we, I mean the collective we, meaning the sun. We're really focusing on the sun here. And all of the planets transit through all of these gates at different speeds, just like they transit through all of the different zodiac signs at different speeds. But the sun is our point of reference that transits through each one of these gates throughout the course of a calendar year and throughout all of the signs throughout the course of a calendar year. So for those of you who are new here, that's really what we're talking about in the cycles of time is the sun transiting through gates and signs and seasons. And occasionally I will throw in another big astrological conjunction or opposition or another transit with planets if it's something that's really major and affecting the energies at the time. But for the most part, again, we're following the sun. Just like the Beatles, tomorrow may rain, so I'll follow the sun. All right, so to get started, we'll talk a little bit about the gate of ordering, since the sun is moving from the gate of growth to the gate of ordering on Tuesday the 16th, tomorrow, from when I'm recording. And the gate of ordering is known as Jun in the I Ching, which means sprouting. It's a combination of the trigrams water and thunder, and it's also described as difficulty at the beginning. This gate is the last gate in the astrology sign of Aries. So each astrology sign that, astrology zodiac breaks the wheel of the year up into 12 parts, and the I Ching and human design break the wheel up into 64 parts. So that's equivalent to about 5.5 gates per zodiac sign. And so we've gone in this course of Aries season, we have transited through, it'll be 6 signs. And so to me, this gate of ordering refers to the last stage of the evolutionary journey in the sign of the Ram. And I talked about this a bit last week, and you might have seen it, on Instagram or various places where I look at all of the human design gates of Aries season. But basically, we started out at the spring equinox with the ram, baby lamb, being born innocent into the world. And then next stage, the next gate is the gate of opinions, where the ram learns about the world around it and forms opinions. And then after that is the gate of the hunter and huntress, where the ram injects himself into the world and starts kind of using those horns to butt into the world. And then the next gate is the gate of shock, which is when the eclipse happened, was in the gate of shock. And that's when the world, the external world, kind of shocks the innocent ram back in return and lets him know that there's always a reaction to every action. And then last week until today, the gate of growth is when the older ram, now the adult ram, kind of can reflect on this whole cycle of innocence to opinions to hunting and injecting to a shocking reaction. And it's this full cycle that really embodies the gate of growth. So starting tomorrow, the final gate of Aries season, the ram, the elder ram now, is inspired to begin something new with all of this information. One thing about that, this difficulty at the beginning description of the gate of ordering is that beginnings are far from easy. Putting order to the chaos or order to a full cycle and figuring out where you fit into that full cycle is definitely not easy. As far as the I Ching hexagrams goes, I reference this in every episode as well because the hexagrams are the original way that the I Ching was written and was created is this beautiful symbolism of yin and yang lines, straight and broken lines that combine into these beautiful reflections on life. I've been learning more and more about them and just wanted to mention that a quick rule of thumb for the hexagrams, I mentioned this is water over thunder. And so the upper trigram, which is water here, is representing external forces or energies in the world, while the lower trigram is representing internal forces or energies. And so in this case of thunder and water for the gate of ordering, there is a powerful internal and thunderous impulse to begin something new this week, to put order to the chaos. But it is met with the upper trigram of water, which is the formless and ever-shifting realities of the external world. So that is, in an I Ching poetic way, the energies of this week. A lot of that has to do with that feeling that when something is getting started or when we have the desire to use all of the knowledge that we've collected over a cycle to begin something, there's a lot of energy and enthusiasm from within, and oftentimes a lot of energy and enthusiasm from without and from the external world as well. But sometimes when that initial energy and enthusiasm stops being matched by the outside world, there is a temptation to seek a new direction or give up as soon as we started. So during the inception of something, we learn that the energy must come from within us and the fire must burn from within us, even if the world around us loses some of its initial interest, or if you're left with less feedback and less external validations and affirmations than you might desire. So, I look around and it does feel like spring is actually really here this week to begin Taurus season. There's blossoms on all of the trees and it's getting to be warmer where I am in New Mexico. And it feels like, okay, there's a lot of big learnings over the past month. And, past cycles, like I mentioned before that too, dating back to childhood and ancestry and the past eclipse and however you want to trace the cycles. But there is a lot of learnings, and it's almost this raw energy of so much data, so much information about how these cycles function. And in my body, I do feel this week a desire to begin something with that, to really see where I fit within that cycle of energy. And I think that this human design and I Ching philosophy is telling us that in the gate of ordering, we have to, keep that fire burning from the inside and not get let down or discouraged by how difficult something can feel in the beginning. And we have to kind of continue to approach our new projects with different perspectives and kind of just continue along in the circumstances, even if they feel difficult at the time. A quote from the I Ching Hexagram 3 from the Divination Foundation is, "The birth of a new venture or relationship is an entry into the unknown. New things seem to be rushing upon you, and confusion can easily take over. However, chaos is a powerful force when you harness it properly, so don't rush things now. Do not let events overwhelm you. As you take the first step, stay calm and ready to persevere. Ask for guidance and support." So if it's your birthday this week, or, if anyone born with the sun or another planet in this gate, you might be familiar with the feeling that the fundamental challenge of initiation is transcending that confusion and establishing order. There's a creativity to this placement. It's a place where talent can come out very playfully, creating order out of chaos. There's a skill of breaking down patterns in order to look at things in different ways and different perspectives. So if you're born in this week, happy birthday, and let me know in the comments if this resonates from you, if you feel like you've been influenced by making order out of chaos in your life. This gate of ordering or sprouting, aka gate 3, is the ending of Aries season, like I mentioned, and it's leading us into Taurus season. So it's a link between the two signs of the zodiac, the ram and the bull. On Friday, the sun is moving into the zodiac sign of Taurus, and we're going to evolve from the wise old ram's visions of a new beginning to the execution from the perspective of the baby cow. Like the first gate of Aries season, which was gate 25, the gate of innocence, this gate 3 of ordering, is also about new beginnings in a different way, kind of with a more bullish nature to it, I would say. So the first gate of Aries season back at spring equinox in mid-March was innocent. It was open-ended and wide-eyed and coming out of the womb of the year, coming into a new year after the infinite depths of Pisces season and starting this fresh new cycle of the astrological new year. But the transitional gate into Taurus season has a different energy, but it's also about a new beginning out of a new cycle. The way I see it is it has kind of more memories of the last phase of life in its recent memory. After all that has happened and all of the big events of Aries season, Taurus season begins coming into the world kind of with the knowledge of how chaotic life can feel. That's definitely a pulse that I'm getting from the collective at this moment, is just like the kind of, whoa, how was your eclipse season? Getting that question, kind of having people talking about eclipse seasons more frequently than they used to, and just recognizing that it feels like a chunk of time where there's just a lot of chaos. It's hard to grasp onto what is what is grounding in that moment. A lot of emotional ups and downs, a lot of, attempts at action and kind of shocks and disappointments of Aries season. I think they're really felt in the body of the newborn calf of Taurus season. And if you're coming into the world, coming into this new sign with that type of fiery Aries energy, the chaos and just trying to process all that's happened, all the baby calf would want is stability. And that is one thing that Taurus is really known for, is a desire for security and stability and order. So here we are in the gate of order. So all zodiac signs are associated with a unique combination of an element, earth, air, fire, water, and a modality, which are cardinal, fixed, and mutable. And those three modalities are kind of like cardinal is the initiating energy, fixed is the stabilizing energy, and mutable is the changing energy, which is the shift into the next season. So Taurus is a fixed earth sign. It's the only fixed earth sign of the zodiac. And these ancient descriptions describe the relative and necessary stability of the season. Just think about fixed earth. It is stable. It is a meadow. It is, roots reaching far down into the ground so that the flowers can bloom. It is this season of a desire for stability that we're entering. And the emerging delicate sprouts of Aries season are now really fixed down into the earth with more stable roots and stable structure. So again, I always really enjoy looking at the zodiac signs and the more I dig into it, the gates of human design and the I Ching kind of in an ecological perspective, really looking at how connected we were to the earth thousands of years ago when these systems were being channeled and created and put into writing and put into mythologies. And so looking at it ecologically is just a really beautiful way for me to understand it and grasp it, especially living in a place with such distinct seasons like Santa Fe has. But everywhere, there is a subtlety. In the Northern Hemisphere, there's a subtle shift of seasons, and it's more pronounced in some places than others, of course. I lived in the Bay Area for a good long while, and it has that kind of Mediterranean climate that's never too cold or too hot, but it definitely does have the seasons of rainy winters and blossoming springs. And so just really tapping into that wherever you are, going outside, and just even if it's not as on the nose as it feels for me here where I am, there are subtle things to notice about how the seasons are changing. And again, the I Ching is known as a translation for the Book of Changes. So it's all about just really, deeply paying attention to these changes as they're happening in our lives. So when I look at Taurus season, as we enter it this week, ecologically, the protective husks around the growing green sprouted plants naturally peel away when it's time to blossom. I look at my flowers that are starting to bloom, and around the base of every blossom is kind of a husk, a protective covering. And when you look at this gate of ordering or difficulty at the beginning, it kind of makes a lot of sense when we think about it as this point in the life cycle of a plant. And like Taurus is this season of middle spring, this fixed earth sign, where there's just blossoming flowers. I just always think flowers and Taurus season. And if you think about being a flower who had never bloomed before, thinking about how excited you might be about the prospect of this inevitable new beginning and ready to go, but also, how much energy it takes to bust out of that protective husk and bloom these delicate, fragile petals, and how scary that might feel if you were a conscious flower to do that, and how difficult really it might feel to bloom on your own and make that beginning of such an expression. And I think that that's kind of where we are energetically. There's this deep desire met with the the realities of the world, that it's still a time when there are rains and winds and different types of weather that could come, and, expression in the beginning, creating something new, is vulnerable because it is so delicate, right? Like a flower. So, luckily flowers don't feel the sensation of worry. At least I don't think so. There's a Jim Carrey quote that I found about flowers, and he says that flowers don't worry about how they're going to bloom. They just open up and turn toward the light, and that makes them beautiful. And I like Jim Carrey, so I thought I'd quote him there. If we look at it metaphorically, between the flowers and the human expression of this part of the year, it is definitely a week to nurture your dreams from within. And the first step is making baby steps towards making order out of the chaos. And perhaps that might be, as Jim Carrey said, by opening up and turning toward the light. Just seeing what it is, what part of this cycle that we've recognized, what part of the primordial beginnings of everythingness is feeling bright to you at this moment, and dedicating some attention toward that brightness this week. Another quote I heard recently, it was a beautiful quote that referenced the word order. Last week, my Qigong teacher, Jay, at the end of class, said that she was looking around the room and saw a bunch of artists in the room. And she said, the definition of artistry is the ability to put order to our obsessions. And to be an artist is to organize our obsessions. And I really absolutely love that. I'd never heard that before, but it really spoke to me as I was thinking about the sun moving from the gate of growth into the gate of ordering. The gate of growth that we're just finishing up, along with the vibes of Aries season, are kind of all about, living, like being born into this primordial soup, to this infinite possibility, right? To be unafraid and unashamed and just kind of look around and gather opinions and try things out and then see what happens. And just really putting yourself out there and receiving what the world has to offer in return. Again, I mentioned it last week, but it's this call and response flow or dance where we, in Aries season, it's a participatory event. It's a participatory season. And by participating in it that way, we can allow ourselves to become obsessed with something because it feels good and because it makes us feel excited. And it's that, Taurus is fixed earth, but Aries is cardinal fire. It's that initiatory fire. And that, in a nutshell, is kind of the energy of ignition and catalyzing things and being a spark, receiving sparks from the universe. So when we shift this week into both the gate of ordering and into Taurus season at the same time, those sparks that were cultivated in that catalyst of Aries season are not going to be dampened by the Taurus season. But the way I see this upcoming season is really just a chance to, figure out which piece of that infinity is brightest and root it down and kind of ground down the obsessions a bit, like take all of these possible worlds and hone into what piece of it you want to organize and put some order to. In the life cycle, Aries is represented by an infant, a newborn who is developing her vision, will open up to the world around her. And if you think about it, infants are passed around by people and carried and worn, and for the most part, they're kind of kept off the ground. I know that in a lot of cultures, that's very deliberate to not put babies down for the entire first year. It's just, keep them in the hands and up above the ground. But when you look at Taurus in the life cycle, it is represented not by an infant, but the next stage, a toddler, and the stage of early childhood. And so at this stage, this baby that is now growing up is laying on the ground on her tummy with her face in the grass, or rolling around on her back or crawling around. And compared to the infancy of Aries season, this Taurus energy is about touching the earth, probably more than the child ever will for the rest of her life. In toddlerhood, being so close to the ground, hands on the ground, crawling around, she probably will never experience that much contact with the earth for a very long time. So, there's still a curiosity in this stage of the zodiac and the life cycle, but there's also more awareness than there was in infancy, and awareness of both the beauty of the sensory world, which is represented by Taurus, the dewdrops and the flowers and the smells and tastes, putting everything in their mouth. There's that curiosity, but it also makes a child aware of danger in a different way. And there's a craving for, amidst all this sensory experience, there's a craving for stability that caregivers and the environment, like a safe environment, can provide for her. And I know I've said the word stability a lot, referring to Taurus and this initiation into Taurus season. But I also like to think of it as just care. What stability feels like is care. And interestingly enough, the sun next week, after moving through this gate of order, is moving into the gate of caring. So that's the first gate that's fully encompassed within Taurus season. And I just thought that was so appropriate, especially when thinking about Taurus season as toddler season, or as this stage of the life cycle. I was thinking about when my daughter was just a little toddler during the spring, especially when we would just go to the park and lay down on the grass and get lost together in the curiosity of like dandelion puffs and dewdrops and roly-polies and other insects, and just, being that close to the ground, looking at the world through the perspective of a child during springtime was just always one of my favorite memories. And, also thinking about Taurus as a toddler, there's a certain stubbornness to Taurus that we've probably all heard about or familiar with. And I think that is definitely, that stubbornness is also a toddler trait, but it really just means that, Taurus, people with Taurus placements, or during this season, being stubborn is just knowing what you want. And I don't think that any Taurus placement should be offended on that at all. I think it's a really, really good thing to know what you want and to know what makes you feel good and feel safe. And I think that's something that we all lose a little bit as we get more conditioned in the world about what other people want from us, or what we expect other people to want, and what society tells us we should want. So this, keeping that intact, this beautiful toddler energy of knowing what you want. If you know any toddlers, have any toddlers in your world, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. There's very specific things, especially when it comes to how something feels. Like, I heard about why toddlers like wheat thins more than blueberries, even though blueberries are sweet and delicious, is because wheat thins are consistent, and blueberries are like, one is delicious and filled with juice and sweetness, and the next one is squishy and yucky, and it's hard to tell the difference. So most of the time, these snack foods that toddlers will choose are because of consistency and order rather than the flavor necessarily. So it's kind of an interesting point. So when we think about the season from the point of view of the medicine wheel, this quarter of the year from about mid-March to mid-June that spans through Aries season, through Gemini season, it's the season of the East, which is also known as the season of childhood. When we think of Aries as an infant embracing the world with fresh eyes, then Taurus is a toddler exploring their senses and their boundaries and putting order to the world. And then Gemini, the next season, is a chatty social kid. And this correlates beautiful with the season of childhood. Just looking Aries, Taurus, and Gemini as the seasons, the signs of childhood. And in the Wuxing 5-phase or 5-element cycle, spring is the season of wood growing out of winter's water. And when I think of wood, I also think of spring's fast-growing plants and how quickly children also grow. I will always remember being so annoyed by my parents' friends who would be like, wow, you grew up so fast, and I can't believe how tall you are. But now that I have a child of my own, I definitely see this. My daughter sprouted about 1.5 inches over the past month alone. And once you start noticing the buds on the trees in this part of spring, it's like, it's so fast how everything just blooms fully. And so there's definitely this wood-like energy of visible growth happening all around us this time of year, kind of like plants emerging from the soil. And so the gate of ordering, where we are this week, is about looking at this expansive growth that's happening all around us and pruning it and weeding the garden a little bit, cutting the hair, and kind of getting some control over the infinite possibilities where the growth can take us. So by doing some pruning and ordering during this season, we're able to show the world what we value and show our lives what is of value to us. I think that's really what pruning is taking away things that are of less value in that moment. And Taurus also is the sign that is about values. So it's ruled by Venus, and it's a sign that is really kind of about sensuality, feeling good, and having our values lead from there, from our senses. And so in this context, rather than just letting anything grow in our garden, we're able to trim out invasive species and plants that would take over all the rest. And by acting to create order, so we can protect the delicate sprouts that are still rising up, or the flowers who might be overtaken by weeds, we help to define what we want to see our garden look like and produce as it flourishes through the upcoming months. So lots of beautiful analogies in there through the life cycle and through the ecology for this week of ordering and Taurus season. And I'll definitely be talking more about Taurus in coming episodes over the next month. I'm hoping to start having special guests on this podcast each month going forward. So an upcoming episode over the next month will hopefully include an interview with a powerful Taurus. So stay tuned for that. I'm definitely excited to start having more conversations on this podcast and more of a dialogue. So reach out if you are interested in being a part of it and just chatting about any of these systems and how they've affected your life. I would love to talk to you. But until then, I'll just keep riffing about all of these interconnections that I find as I'm laying awake at night between these different systems that I'm studying. And that this reaches the end of the part of the episode about where the sun is transiting through from the gates and seasons and zodiacal signs. But I am going to dive in a little bit deeper at the end right now to the energy of in a big astrological conjunction that's happening between the planets of Jupiter and Uranus. It's one of the most talked about astrological events of the year. And so I thought I'd give it a little bit of love this time because it is also happening in the sign of Taurus. So since we've been talking so much about this emergent season of the bull, the sun transiting into this sign, I thought it might be interesting to see how we will be affected by Jupiter and Uranus meeting up in Taurus as well. It's kind of a big deal, guys. So Jupiter and Uranus really only meet up in the sky about once every 14 years or so, but they haven't met together in the sign of Taurus since 1941. Jupiter is the planet of expansion, benevolence, growth, and opportunity. Jupiter is Zeus in the Greek pantheon. And Uranus is the planet of liberation and revolution, rebellion and rebels, geniuses, and the future. So whenever and wherever they meet up, their energies collide. And you can tell just from those adjectives that it's kind of some big energy. I would say it's, the eclipse last week felt like some big energy, but in a little bit more of an ominous way. There was Chiron there. There was a lot of more kind of serious undertones. But Jupiter and Uranus in Taurus are big energy in a different way. Jupiter conjunct Uranus throughout history has been linked with revolutions and with the hopes, dreams, and wishes of humanity, with quantum leaps in technology, and with freedom of expression. Jupiter is known as the great benefic in traditional astrology, and he's always been associated with luck. I read recently that astronomically, Jupiter actually protects the Earth and other planets closer to the sun because the giant gravitational field around Jupiter prevents the outer planets from orbiting too close to the sun and smashing into the closer planets. So without Jupiter, we might not even be here. So definitely lucky that Jupiter is in our midst of this solar system. I thought that was super fascinating. I was born in 1983 when Jupiter and Uranus were conjunct as well in Sagittarius. So I feel the effects of this transit on my life since it's in my natal chart. And if you were born in 1941, 1969, 1983, 1997, or 2010, you also have Jupiter conjunct Uranus in your birth chart. Some people are like, wow, lucky, it's definitely, it's a big one. There was an article that I read on astrocharts.com recently that says an aspect of Jupiter conjunct Uranus in the natal chart indicates a person who is comfortable riding the winds of change, goes all out in the things they set out to do, and knows how to stay enthusiastic about their own ideas, particularly unconventional ones. And that resonates with me. I would say oftentimes Jupiter-Uranus conjunctions indicate big technological or scientific advances and breakthroughs. So a little bit of anecdotal evidence for that is in 1969, when they met up in the relational sign of Libra. That was the year of the Apollo moon landing, Neil Armstrong on the moon, as well as a lot of major protests and rebellions against the Vietnam War and the freedom of expression that was really coming out in the hippie movement and all of the social movements of the late 60s. All of the psychedelic movements that were happening there. It really screams Jupiter conjunct Uranus. Then in 1983, they were conjunct again in the wisdom spreading sign of Sagittarius, and both mobile phones and the internet were brought to the public. So that was a huge year of technological advances that would forever change the world. In 1997, the two big planets were conjunct in the futuristic sign of Aquarius, and the first cloned sheep, Dolly, was born that year in 97. And then in 2010, they were conjunct in Aries, which is, the planet of drive and aggression and war. And that was the year of the Arab Spring, also SpaceX's first rocket, the WikiLeaks scandal, and the first electric cars on the marketplace, and the start of the CERN Large Hadron Collider. So it goes on, and, we can probably find technological advances wherever we look over the past 100 years, but these years really did seem to be major pivots and just huge breakthroughs in these realms of both social and political rebellion and revolution, as well as technological quantum leaps. So In Taurus, where it's happening this year, the sign that rules our values and what makes us feel secure and cared for, this conjunction could mean a big expansion or revolution in that realm. So what we value and what makes us feel secure can definitely be money, and Taurus being the sensual sign of spring can definitely be associated with material pleasures. Other than money, it can also look like food and agriculture and the earth herself. So this conjunction can also mean a liberatory expansion to our values in regards to security and basic needs and who has what and haves and have-nots and the unequal distribution of resources around this world. It seems to be a big place of focus at this moment. When we look back to 1941, the last time the two planets were in Taurus, it was the year that Rosie the Riveter was introduced, and we were in the middle of World War II, and women were being recruited to work and also paid for their work a lot more than they used to be before that. And this was a major milestone in the expansion and liberation of women in the workplace, which then would affect all the generations to come a lot, even if we are still working toward equal pay. This year, both climate change and the genocide in Gaza are calling our attention to food security and famine and the unequal distribution of wealth and resources on this planet. And we're in the midst of protests and uprisings surrounding these issues right now, absolutely. I know with tax day coming up, there are a lot of protests happening about tax dollars, our tax dollars funding genocide. And that just seems very appropriate for this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. Meanwhile, there's also so much happening in the realm of technological breakthroughs that it's hard to see what will stand out when we look back on it. But there are a lot of Taurian things that are happening in technology and R&D right now. Like there's utilizing AI in environmental R&D, and green chemistry is another big thing that is being looked into to reduce plastics and lithium-ion batteries. And we're also talking about going back to the moon with the new Artemis mission that aims to land the first woman and the first person of color on the moon by 2025. So only time will tell how this affects us globally, but it's fun to look back at these 14-year intervals and see the wild, expansive, and revolutionary things humans have been up to. The Jupiter-Uranus conjunction is going to be happening in a different gate of human design and I Ching. The sun is in gate 3 of ordering this week, but Jupiter and Uranus are a little bit further ahead in the sign of Taurus, and they're in the gate 23, which is the gate of assimilation. I've also heard this gate described as the alchemical wordsmith. And the sun will be reaching this gate in early May, so this is a bit of foreshadowing about that season as far as the solar season, but they will be highlighted with these two major planets in it over the course of this week. And the energy of Gate 23 is all about the potential to effectively translate complex ideas into digestible and actionable insights. So like the conjunction of Jupiter and Uranus itself, the part of the wheel that it's happening in is also about breakthroughs and translation. So this weekend, when this is going on April 20th, know that breakthroughs may come to you, and not only in an intellectual way, but they'll be coming through connecting to deep intuitive understanding. In Taurus, Taurus rules the throat, and so paying attention to what others are saying and what you're saying. Speech is going to be really important this week and for this upcoming season. But looking at this particular gate, it's all about, translating intuition into our voice. So paying attention to your gut this Saturday and to your intuitive hits, you may reach a deeper level of comprehension. If you look especially for alignments with the greater good and the big picture, it could lead to a deeper sense of purpose and fulfillment. So yeah, don't be afraid to speak about what insights or breakthroughs are coming your way. I think this is a very vocal time, and a time to make our mark on the world. So just recognizing that whatever it is that comes to you from your gut and that is spoken through your voice is a part of a beautiful weaving of voices from around the world, as we're all experiencing this rare 14-year transit together. So how will you personally be affected by this planetary meetup? In addition to the general look at where the planets are meeting up in the wheel, it's also a good idea to check out your birth chart and look to which of the 12 houses Taurus is falling for you personally. For me, Taurus is in my 10th house at the top of my chart, because I'm a Leo rising, and the 10th house is the home of career, the public status, and the way we show up in the world. So for me, Taurus season generally tends to emphasize my career and public self. This Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus is definitely calling attention to my 10th house, because that's where they are aligning. And so we'll see if something lucky or expansive or revolutionary happens in that realm for me this week. So yeah, go ahead and take a look at your birth chart. You can pull one on astro.com or lots of other places, and just look at which house Taurus rules for you, and expect a bit of an exciting boost in that area of life. Of course, these planets are both slow-moving, much slower than the sun, around the ecliptic. So they've each been in the sign of Taurus for a while. The sun spends about 1 month in each sign, and Uranus spends about 7 years moving through a single sign. So it's been in Taurus since 2018. And Jupiter spends about 1 year in each sign, because Jupiter travels around the sun every 12 years, so 1 year in each sign. And Jupiter's been in Taurus since last May, and will leave Taurus for Gemini on May 25th of this year. So, you can look at the house that Taurus is in since 2018, when Uranus entered the sign, and kind of see what's happened over the course of that time in your life. For me, I would say 2018, the planet of liberation and revolution, Uranus, definitely shook up my career that year. I had a baby and then went on parental leave, and then went back to my company in a totally new role for a few months. And then I ended up leaving the company shortly thereafter in early 2020. So this was a big Uranian kind of revolutionary move for me, as I had founded the company in 2011 and worked on it nonstop in its formation and growth for 7 solid years. And so since Uranus entered my 10th house of career, my career life has totally been overhauled, and I've taken the past few years to study and learn and establish myself as a mother, and I'm getting back into my art practice and astrology, and also somatic and breathwork facilitation. So during the time over the past year that Jupiter's been in my 10th house, I've started my Substack and the Instagram for astrosomatics and this podcast, and started working with clients, giving readings and sessions, and just expanding the reach into this new world. So regardless of what this week's exact conjunction of Jupiter and Uranus does for my career, I've already seen effects of both of these planets in a big way, kind of right on time. I'm actually really touched by thinking about my 10th house of career in Taurus and what Taurus means, because the way my passions about the earth and her cycles are showing up in my public work was like totally unexpected to me. I've been drawn to astrology and breathwork and nature immersion as healing paths after my last career kind of unexpectedly broke apart. And now by this year, Uranus-Jupiter conjunction, I've started to see how the common thread between all of these passions and practices are feeling connected to the cycles of the earth, herself. And so, yeah, again, really fun reflections in my personal life. And I'd love to hear yours. What's going on for you in the Taurus realm of your chart? So, super long story short, this week encourages us to weed the garden and start to put some order to the chaos, but also to maintain flexibility and open-mindedness as the week progresses into this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. So both the gate of ordering and this massive rare conjunction are telling us to open our hearts to advisors and collaborators and new people in our lives, as these intersections will likely be the new place for new opportunities and solutions. And some keywords for this week are sudden opportunities, striving for freedom, idealism and not accepting unjust conditions, potential windfalls, creative genius, consciousness expanding perspectives, exposure to completely new aspects of life, speaking your mind, aligning with the bigger picture, the greater good for the best results. So what a week, what an episode. I hope you have a beautiful entry to Taurus season, tending to whatever gardens are in your world, from your body to your home to your community. As always, thank you so much for listening. In this week of sprouting and order, I would love if you could help me grow this project and sprout it out of the ground. So you can help by commenting on this episode or sharing it with a friend or leaving a review wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also join the Cycles of Time community on Facebook or follow me on Instagram or TikTok at Astrosomatics or Cycles of Time podcast. Thank you all for being a part of this, and I hope you have a beautiful week ahead. See you next week. Bye.